Thank you very much for all of you turning up today. I know that we're all busy, so that's a real makes us feel incredibly proud that you're following us, especially with so many other events and webinars that you could turn up to. So thank you very much. Somebody mentioned that I've been to 28 countries, and of course, I've seen countries today. Georgia, I've been to lots of times. Peru, I've been to once. Poland, I've been to, I think, 3 or 4 times. I've been to Slovakia, Ukraine, of course, I've visited many times, and I've also been to Brighton, okay? But I haven't been to some places like Jordan or El Salvador or Argentina. So I hope that one day, Malta, I've been to 3 times to give talks, okay? And Moscow, I've been to Moscow many times and have many amazing memories from that too. So thank you all for turning up. Before I begin my talk, I do make a confession. I've got a bit of a cold and I've got a bit of a sore throat. My voice occasionally goes out and hurts a little bit, and I start to cough. And if so, I do apologize, but I hope I'll be fine. Meanwhile, in the chat box, I was going to say, can you please always make nice comments in the chat box, but I can see that you're already doing that, so I don't need to remind you. We're talking today about opening teenagers' hearts and minds to the world. And before we do that, on my way to doing that, I'm going to start by doing a little grammar exercise with you. I'll explain why later, but we've got a little exercise here for reported speech. I'm going to make you work a little bit, okay? We've got 4 sentences on the screen, and all I want you to do is to tell me which 2 of those sentences are grammatically correct. Maya, you were incredibly fast. I think you were the first there. That is so fast. 1 and 4, 1 and 4, 1 and 4. Most of us are saying 1 and 4. 1 and 4, that is brilliant. That means that we're all in the right place. We're all English teachers. Of course, number 1, we've got, she said his name was Jack. In that sentence, with said, we don't need to give the person that we're speaking to. Whereas in number 4, she told, we have to say she told me, she told him, she told her friend. We need the object. We need the person that we're actually speaking to. We know that, okay? And we often have to teach that to our students because our students can make an easy mistake. Now, there's a little exercise which you don't need to do this. If you want to put your answers in the box, you can, but you don't need to, okay? You don't need to work too hard. I'm going to do it for you. This is a real letter that Isaac Asimov, the science fiction author, wrote to a place in Troy, Michigan. I'm going to read it to you, and I'm going to give you the correct answers. When a new building opened in 1971 in Troy, Michigan, science fiction author Isaac Asimov congratulated the children of Troy. He told the children it was a spaceship that would take them to the farthest reaches of the universe. He also said the building was a time machine that would take them to the far past and the far future. He said it was a teacher that knew more than any human being. He also told them it was a friend that would amuse them. Finally, he told the students that the building was a gateway to a better, happier, and more useful life. So he wrote this when a building was being opened. My question to you is, what building? What type of building? Wow, that was very fast. Irma, I think. Somebody before Irma. Library. It could be, somebody this morning said also, it could be maybe a school or a university. In fact, it was when the Library of Troy, Michigan was opened for the first time in 1971, and it was a library. And isn't that a great way to describe a library? A library as a place that can take you to the past and the future. So a library has books which talk about prehistory. They have books that tell you about the last Second World War. They have books that tell you about any period of history. And there are also books that can predict things that are going to happen in the future, including science fiction. It could also take us to different places, So when we read, we can read about any place in the world. We can find a book about any of your amazing countries and find out about customs, traditions, the history of those countries. It could also be like a friend, as we said before. So a good book, I think, is a good companion. It takes your mind off your problems and helps you to understand other people better. And a book is also like a teacher, right? A book can teach you about many, many different things, whether it's maths, philosophy, or anything else. And you can find that letter if you look online, but it's a beautiful text, I think. This idea of books and libraries taking us to other places. And what I want to consider as a starting point is that in the classroom, the equivalent of the library, I suppose, is your course book, is your textbook, because your textbooks can also do this. They can take your students to other places. They can give them information about lots of different things that are happening around the world. I describe this photo here. This is actually, by the way, just so that you know, this is literally when I turn my head to the left, this is what I can see. Exactly what you can see on your screen now. This is what I call a shelfie, because it's not a selfie exactly, but it's a picture of some shelves full of my own books, okay? I've been writing books now for 30 years. This is a collection of my books. In the bottom left-hand corner, there are some white books there. They were called Teamwork. And that was the first course that I wrote 30 years ago when I was just a young boy. And when I started writing books, they were very different, I think, from the books that I write today. And one of the main differences is that they include, today, my books include more real world content. I think that in the past, in books for teenagers, we used to combine a lot of facts, but then also with fiction, with invented information, invented people, invented events. And I find that interesting. When I look back, I find it interesting to compare the way that we taught, the materials that we used to teach teenagers 30 years ago, and the materials that we use today. I think it's fair to say that today we use a lot more real world content. And that made me start analyzing, thinking, why is that the case? Why do we like to concentrate today on the real world? And I think one of the answers is that today we want to help our students to separate this idea of real information, real news, from fake news or fake information. And I'm going to give you an example from this series that I wrote 30 years ago called Teamwork. I once went to a school visit to be interviewed by the students in a school near where I live in Madrid, Spain. And the first question that this young boy wanted to ask me, he was like going like, Dave, please, what is mosquitosis? And he had looked at this story that we had in our book, and it mentioned this rare illness called mosquitosis. In the chat box, can you tell me, do you think mosquitosis exists or it doesn't exist? Yes or no? What do you reckon? Mosquitosis? No. Okay. Somebody, because they were typing fast, actually said bo. Okay, but that's fair. But I think bo means no. Right, okay. Thank you very much. That's really interesting because a lot of people are saying no. A lot of people are saying, I don't know. And that is the problem, I think. When I wrote this 30 years ago, we thought it was kind of funny. I teach in Spain. I'm sort of bilingual, English and Spanish. I hope it's not actually. Sorry. But mosca means fly in Spanish. And so we thought it was an interesting name for an illness, but we invented it. I don't think it does exist, but if something relatively similar exists, it's totally coincidental. When I wrote it, it didn't exist. And the interesting thing is, 30 years ago, students didn't have Google to find out if it was actually really true or not. There was no way that they could know. And I think today, now, when I look back, that's a little bit confusing, okay? Because we have enough information in the world rather than add in extra incorrect, false information. So I think that what we tend to think about today is teaching real-world content and also helping students to be able to distinguish when they read something online, what is real and what is fake, which is complicated even for adults. Now, this is a checklist. You don't need to read everything in the checklist, but this is a checklist which helps our students to think about how they can decide if something is probably more real than fake. For example, if they Google the people in the text, will they find out that they really exist? When they look at the source, will they find a reliable source like something like the BBC, or will it be an independent website that somebody that we don't know who it is has just begun? In other words, and by the way, you'll get a PDF of this session so you can look at this checklist in detail. But what I want to stress is that today we tend to look, I think, with our teenagers at real texts and help them to decide what is real and what is fake. And in that case, in our textbooks, I think it's a good idea if we don't mix up too much deliberate fake information. Another reason why I think we quite like real-world content today in our ELT materials is because of this trend that we've had for over 10 years, I think, of CLIL, content and language integrated learning, and English as a medium of instruction. I'm sure we all know at least what CLIL is, but just very quickly to explain, CLIL is the idea that we are teaching something and we're teaching it through English. So, for example, obviously in some schools around the world now, and you can maybe tell me in your chat box if it's true of your country, sometimes people teach history in English. They might teach physical education in English. Obviously, many universities now in different parts of all the world are using English as the medium of instruction. Now, I think simplifying greatly, but simplifying, we could say that two of the advantages of CLIL and EMI, firstly, the students get two for the price of one. What do I mean? Well, I mean that if you're doing history in English, you're learning history and you are learning English. You're doing two things at the same time. And to be honest, when I write my course books, I'm trying to do the same thing. I want my texts to be teaching the students something, not just English. So the content is useful, important, or at the very least, interesting. And that for me is the first, it's the basis, I suppose, of when I'm writing a book. Is it interesting and useful and has some important content? And at the same time, of course, I'm doing this in English. The other thing, and this is a theory which I'm not completely sure that anybody has been able to prove this scientifically, is that when we teach a subject through English, there is an idea that we concentrate on the content and the English comes more easily and more naturally. Now, I'm not completely sure myself if I believe this is true, but I think there's an element of truth that when you're concentrating on the content, maybe the English, you're not thinking about the passive, you're not thinking about the present perfect, but maybe you're using it naturally because of what you are actually studying. So I think that this has influenced the way that we teach, particularly in secondary, over the last 10 years or more. So I think that's, again, why real-world content is so useful. So if we're trying to open our students' hearts and minds to the world, then let's use real-world content to do it. Another thing that I think we are all aware of today is that we are very interested in the idea of sustainability and global citizenship. And I think we're all aware of this multicolor image now. As teachers, I think we're generally very aware of this. The Sustainable Development Goals. I think that you can see that number 4 is quality education. Quality education involves teaching our younger students about all of these different things, about clean energy, about good health and well-being, about clean water, about climate action. I think that we are using these development goals, sustainable development goals, to actually include content that is useful for our students. So we're teaching our students English, but we're also teaching them extremely relevant content, which could be essential to the future, if you like, of the planet even. One thing that I think is really useful, this is from, if you look at the bottom of the screen, the Gateway to the World Online Teachers Resource Center. We've got information about teaching sustainable development goals and global citizenship. The one thing that I want to draw your attention to here is not all of these different points. You can look at this again when you look at your PDF. What I think is really important is this idea of separating what we teach into knowledge, the green section, attitudes, the red section, and skills, the orange section. Knowledge. So we're teaching our students content about the world. We can teach them about different countries, about different customs, different traditions, different ways of doing things, different events. We can also teach attitudes. So we can get students to think about how they feel about this. I think this is really important. One thing is teaching the content, but what is your attitude to this? Do you feel positively or negatively to this country even, or to these traditions? And I think we need to have these open conversations about how they feel. What is their attitude? We can't necessarily change their attitude easily, but it's good to know what their attitude is. And the third section there, this idea of developing skills. And I think we would all agree that developing creativity, collaboration, communication, critical thinking, as we mentioned before, these are all really powerful things that we need to do with our students. So as I say, when you get a chance to look at this more slowly, have a look at the different points. But the main point that I want to think about is this idea of 3 different approaches to teaching global questions: knowledge, attitudes, and skills. And those 3 areas are also relevant for this next point, which is intercultural competence. This is very relevant to my talk. Intercultural competence is the idea of getting students to be aware of how people from different places, different countries, different backgrounds, different cultures may have obviously these different ideas, and how can we work together in a positive, constructive way. Now, I think that in the world that we live in today, this is something that is going to become more and more important, more and more relevant to the way that we work in our small world. How can we work together constructively? On this slide, which I would recommend that you look at more slowly when you get your PDF, you'll notice straight away that we've got this same idea of 3 divisions: knowledge, skills, and attitudes. Knowledge, so again, being aware, giving information about different cultures, how they think, what they do. Skills, so things like listening, evaluating, analyzing. And the one thing that I really want to draw your attention to on this slide is the attitudes. So what are your students' attitudes to people from different cultures, to different parts of the world? And the attitudes that we're trying to build here are important attitudes of respect, openness. So I think that's good. Openness when it says suspending criticism of other cultures. Curiosity. So there's nothing better really, to develop with teenage students than being curious about how different cultures work, how different people do things differently according to their background, where they're from. Um, that openness, that curiosity, and the last one, which is my favorite, where it says discovery, tolerating ambiguity and viewing it as a positive experience. I think that sometimes we're frightened of ambiguity. We're frightened of people thinking differently from us. But maybe we should be doing the opposite. We should be open to ambiguity, and we should see it as something that is, I think, and I believe really sincerely, that it's a positive experience. Ambiguity, to err is to human, no, and to doubt is to be human. I think this idea of not always thinking in terms of things as being black and white, but as many different shades of grey. So basically, in a nutshell, to finish my introduction, I think the great thing about teaching teenagers is that, at least in my point of view, is that secondary students are discovering the world. They're at a moment of their lives when they are leaving sort of a closed family and school environment, and they're gradually opening their eyes to the world and everything that's around them. And I think that the great thing is that we, as their teachers, have the privilege, really, of being there to open their minds. I don't know if Sonia has just planned that, but I think that we're saying exactly the same thing at the same time. Yeah, that's great. We are their guides, and the materials that we use, the materials that we use are also helping to guide them to seeing this new world. So I think it's important that the materials we use are carefully chosen so that they are creating a positive image there of looking around and seeing the world around them. And what I don't want us to forget at any moment is that we are actually English teachers. So our goal is to help our students to discover the world. And the great thing that we can do about this is that we also can help them to discover the English language. And so we're doing this. We're getting two for the price of one again. We're being able to introduce our students to the world and at the same time help them to discover English. So let's see how we can do that. The first thing that I want to look at is how we raise awareness of the richness of the world around us. Personally, I love this image. Jade is going to do a great talk about using images in the classroom afterwards. This is a beautiful image, and it's this holy festival, which interestingly was once a very localized event and now has crossed many barriers and borders and is something that I think is celebrated in different parts of the world. And this section of the unit from Gateway to the World A2 is looking about how travel, so when we travel, we can really broaden our mind. And travel, just can help you to open your mind to other cultures. Now, of course, many of your students might not be able to travel, but of course, there are other different ways that you can learn about different cultures. In the chat box, while I'm talking, you might want to tell me which of these methods you really like. But there are the different ways of learning about different cultures. One thing we could do is reading books, like I said at the beginning of the session. We can watch films, and many films can give us an insight into how different cultures think, how they work, what are their traditions. Of course, we can try to make friends with people from another community, which is great if that's possible for you. We can listen to world music, and we can try to learn another language. And what I think is really interesting is when we teach English, in many ways, we're also broadening our students' minds to different ways of thinking. A lot of you are saying that you like all of them. Some of you like some more than others. 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. Great. I've got another question for you for the chat box. What other methods of learning about different cultures can you think of? Is there anything that's not on my list? I think there are many things that are not on my list. But travel, okay, so travel, we've kind of mentioned travel, but yes. Mohammed has got the word that I wanted, actually. I'll come back to Mohammed's word because I'm going to talk all about it. Olgika, I'm sorry, I pronounced your name probably terribly. Rohani is saying another word that I like. Actually, yeah, so empathy is a nice thing too. We'll come back to empathy, I think, at the end of the session. Online friends, okay, that's a nice idea too. projects is a great idea, and I'll also mention that. Okay, well, many of you, I think Mohammed was the first one to say it, but food is a great way to learn about different cultures, right? This is a text from Gateway to the World A2, and it's all about food around the world. I'm not expecting you to read my text. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about it. There are two very interesting things about it. One is that it suggests that in the modern world, in the richer countries, if you like, teenagers, for example, tend to eat the same types of food, whether it's pizza or chips or hamburgers. They've kind of sort of like become like international food. Another thing, which is almost the opposite, is that a study by Cambridge University discovered that 9 out of 10 countries with a very good diet were actually in Africa. I think that's a great thing for my students in Spain to learn and to know about and to analyze and maybe investigate more. But I think we can learn a lot about the way that we eat in different countries, and food is really an essential part of any culture. And one, I think, that brings people around the world together because we generally like good food. Well, basically, I like good food, okay? Now, I'm going to go in a tangent and I'm going to come back again, but this text in particular makes me think about a new way of thinking about your course book. And it's a word that begins with G and finishes in Y. It's not gateway because, right, it's not gateway, and it's not geography, but geography is a great way, actually. And I'm gonna try and create a talk about geography as a way of thinking about your course book. But it's not geography, it's not gastronomy. It should be. Maybe one day I'll write a book about teaching English through food. Okay, I've just had an idea. And it's not geometry, because the word finishes gastrodiplomacy. That is a great word. That is brilliant. Gastrodiplomacy. That has to exist. Anyway, my word starts with G and finishes with ability. It's not globability. It's this is a big clue. I want to see somebody try and write it in the chat box. Thank you, somebody who said that first. Googleability. Googleability, okay? Googleability, what do I mean? Now, whatever course book you're using, this is a great thing to experiment with your course book. In my books, the idea is always that the texts, you can Google them. You can find out more about the people, places, events in a text. So in this text, I haven't mentioned that in the text, there is reference to somebody called Greg Siegel. And Greg Siegel has got some amazing photographs. And if you're listening to me and you can do this at the same time, just Google Greg Siegel Daily Bread, and you're going to see some amazing photographs. Now, I think that our course books, if they include real information like Gateway to the World, Google them, get the students to Google the people in your text, find out more about them, find more about the places, the events. And what you're doing is you're creating a bridge between your course books and the world outside. I think this is really motivating for our students to realize that what they're doing in their English class is not just made up, it's not just invented, it is actually teaching them to do it. I'm not sure that you need to work much at doing this. All you need to do is literally find the name, find a place, and Google it and see what happens. One great way to use this, by the way, is for fast finishers, right? Because a fast finisher, sorry, I'm going to go back. A fast finisher who finishes a text and has answered all the questions, you can get them to Google the information and then tell the class more about them afterwards. So try that with whatever course book you're using. I suppose you could say that if your course book is using people that don't really exist, then maybe that's something for you to bear in mind and be aware of. Now, I'm going to move on. Next point, this idea of using texts to open up to different ways of thinking, different ways of acting, and questioning stereotypes and avoiding cliches. Now, I'm going to give you an example of this by doing an exercise. One exercise that we can use with any image is this exercise of see, think, wonder. And it's very simple. You show them an image and you ask the students to say, what do you see? So basically describe objectively what you can see in that photo. The next question is, what do you think the photo shows? So speculation. So I can see this and I think it's showing, etc., etc. And then the third question, what do you wonder when you look at the photo? What more would you like to know? So I think this is a great way of using any image from a course book, any image that you use in your class. Now, I've got a photo for you here. And so in the chat box, we don't have time to do this like slowly, but what do you see? What do you think? What do you wonder? In this image here, what can you see? A woman? Yep, we're good. Hiking. Bolivia, South America, gorgeous mountain. My country, somebody said. Great. Right, now, show your image to your students. Your students are going to be interested to know what it's all about. What is this person? What's this person doing? And then we can show them this text. And this is about these ladies from Aymara, indigenous Aymara women from Bolivia. And these women are inspirational, I think. They're turning around stereotypical ideas. They were originally people, these women went up with their husbands, climbing mountains, but they went to a certain level and then they did the cooking for the mountaineers who went higher. And one day, one of the ladies asked her husband what it was like to see the mountain from the top of the mountain. And her husband said, well, why don't you go up and see? And that's exactly what they did. And now they're famous around the world because these women have climbed some of the highest peaks in the Andes. And I think that that is not even their limits. I think they're thinking of going to further levels, further places. So I think this is an inspiring text from around the world, which is a universal lesson, turning around stereotypes of what people could or should be doing with their lives. And I think this is important, that we're giving these models inspiration, as I say, to our students. Now, of course, when we talk about seeing things, there's nothing better than a video. And what I'm going to do now is share a video with you, which for me breaks down many stereotypes, makes us think about identity, our own identity, how we describe other people's identity. So I'm going to show you a 2-minute video. And all I want you to do is at the end of the video, tell me if there is anything that impacted you. Okay, so 2 minutes. And what do you feel about this video?
I'm Jonathan. My father's English. My mother's originally from Jamaica.
My name is Natalie, and my mother is Indian, and my father is English.
These are the subjects of photographs telling the stories of people with mixed heritage. A selection of the work is going onto the walls of the Copeland Gallery in Peckham for an exhibition showcasing the mixed race faces platform. So when it began, it was people that you knew, it was family members, but soon people started to come to you to have their picture taken by you.
Yes, they started writing to us and sending us messages via the Instagram. They're coming through with their, not issues, because mixed race is not about issues, but it's about their embracing their culture, and they're finding other people who are doing the same things.
In the last census, 5% of London's population stated that they are mixed race. It's the fastest growing ethnic group. This project provides a forum to discuss identity.
Hey, there's like hundreds of people all around me with stories that are exactly like my own, or slightly different, but it's nice to know that all of these things I've been feeling and internalizing for years and years are the same things that these people have as well. And it's just nice that we get to talk about it now.
At some stage, we've all had to grapple with this idea of belonging and identity, and
which community we belong to, if any, and trying to make peace with that.
And for the photographer who, with her son and daughter-in-law, have garnered these testimonials, there have been similar revelations.
In Holland once I said to the woman, people on the street, you're so lucky you've had normal lives. You're all normal. She just looked at me like this. I said, yeah, my life has been so diverse. 20 years in Ghana, then England, then Holland, then up and down like a yo-yo. She looked at me and she said, oh my God, but that's the beauty of it all, isn't it? You've had such richness in your life.
First of all, apologies. I was doing something on the screen and I think maybe the video stopped for a second. I'm sorry about that. Thank you for all the comments that you're commenting about this video. I personally love this video. It's only 2 minutes and it includes so much really beautiful information. To be honest, it does sometimes always make me want to cry. There is this idea, first of all, it's amazing that, that mixed heritage is one of the biggest growing ethnic races, which is an interesting concept, right? That people are coming together, mixing and forming, partnerships. And that's important, I think, for our students to sort of realize. Also, I think the ending of this video is so powerful when she talks about the diversity. It's not a negative thing. It's, she says literally, you've had such richness in your life, and that's the beauty of it. And I think that those are great, 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 great messages for our teenage students to be aware of. Somebody in the chat box mentioned variety is important and people being proud of their identity. And that's what we want our students to be proud of their own identity and also to be accepting of people from other backgrounds. So a really powerful video, I think. Okay, I'm going to move on because I know that I don't have much time. And in fact, I might miss out something from the end of my talk just because I don't have enough time to do everything today, which I'm sorry for. One thing that we mentioned before as learning about other cultures is that we can make friends with a person from another community. Now, that is not always easy to do. One thing that I did want to mention is that with Gateway to the World, we have this amazing virtual classroom exchange. Maybe some of you are already signed up and using this. It's organized between Macmillan and Empatico. And in a nutshell, we are connecting your students in your classroom using Gateway to the World with students from another country, another culture, another background in a different part of the world. And so what we're doing is we're helping you to link your students with students who've got different background, maybe different, growing up in a different place. And we're actually helping them to realize the things that they have in common together. And after this session, you have the opportunity to go to a showcase session where you will learn more about this program, Virtual Classroom Exchange. Now, very quickly, this part I'm going to go incredibly quickly and then come to the end. I think that one personal opinion of mine, which you are free to disagree with, is that if you tell students what to think, teenage students what to think, I think they often rebel against us. And I think that that's one thing that I've learned from teaching teenagers for over 30 years is that what we should be doing is not telling students what to think. We should be encouraging them to think for themselves. We might always not like what they think, but if we need to develop that idea of a thinking routine with our students. There are two simple ideas that I want to share with you. One is think, question, explore. You can use this with any video in any book or any listening or any video. So 3 stages. What do you think you know about the topic? So it could be the question of mixed heritage. What do you think you know about this topic? The next question, what questions do you have about mixed heritage? What would you like to know? And the third stage is explore the text, explore the video. Does it answer your questions? And if not, can you try to explore other sources? So this is a very simple technique that you can use with any text, particularly about information about somewhere in the world. What do you think? What questions do you have? And now go and explore. Great way to encourage our students then to go and find more information. And another one which encourages students to be open to changing their minds is this idea of I used to think and now I think. Okay, so whenever we read a text, we're going to read a text about fast fashion. And at the end of the text, you ask, okay, what did you used to think about this topic? What do you think now? Has your mind changed in any way? Maybe it has, maybe it hasn't. As I say, we're not preaching. You can't tell somebody what to think, but you can help them to develop their thinking. And the very last thing that I want to talk about, and then I'll finish, and then we've got maybe 2-3 minutes for any questions. In the world, there are often lots of bad news too, and I'm obviously thinking about earthquakes, war, natural disasters, many parts of the world. Of course, bad news can really affect sometimes teenage students in an emotional way. So here I just wanted to share some ideas about good advice for teenagers who are upset by bad news. Can anybody guess what the word is in number 1? How can talk? Thank you, Svetlana. Talk about it. Number 2, bad news is often in the news because it is relatively what? Bad news is relatively rare. Thank you, Thin. I'm not sure if I pronounced your name correctly, but it's relatively rare. Remember that it's totally to feel upset by bad news. Normal, natural, exactly. If you feel the need, ask questions. And it says there is no such thing as a question. What do you think that is? Exactly, Victoria, a stupid question. And find out if there is any idea about positive. Thank you, Amalia. Yes, find out if there's any positive action you can take to help. And number 6, do something that I'm going to tell you, it's do something that you enjoy to take your mind off it. So I think if we're talking about bad news, we're talking about learning about the world, we have to accept that sometimes there's lots of bad things that do happen in the world. But I think that this advice, which you'll get on your PDF, could be useful to share with your students. I finished my talk. My voice is still here, more or less. Maybe you've got a few questions before... Hello, Monica. How are you?
Hi, Dave. Fine. I'm amazed with this marvelous talk. I'm sure that each one of us is taking a little bit of your experience with them. Keywords such as knowledge, attitude, skills, something that I loved. That we, as teachers, we have the privilege to open their eyes to the world. I just love that one. Thank you, Dave. And yes, we do have some questions. Wait, here we have one, and let me see. How can we develop autonomous study skills on school leavers?
So we're talking, I imagine, then about students who are sort of like in the last years of education, sort of like, well, I think it's a great age actually to be teaching autonomous learning, because of course those students are very soon going to go to university where they won't have a teacher telling them what to do, and they'll need to learn on their own. So I think that any of the study skills that we often teach to our teenage students, such as even actually the Googleability, sort of finding more information on your own to learn more about a topic, the idea of simply getting students to organize their study time, how much time they need to revise for exams, etc. I would say, I mean, if you're using Gateway, we have lots of these suggestions about different ways of encouraging students to, develop that capability of learning on their own. The best way to study vocabulary before an exam, etc., etc. So, yeah, I think there are lots of techniques.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Dave. And here we have another one. Now that you are talking about real-life content, is it a good idea to have teenagers read some articles or pieces of news from the original newspapers? They seem to have a higher level.
I think that's a really good point. Yes. I mean, in a course book, what we try to do, particularly at lower levels, is we try and, we take real things and we make them accessible to lower levels. I think when your students are beginning to get mid-intermediate to higher intermediate, B1 plus, I personally would encourage my students to go and find an interesting story, something that interests them. Now, of course, there will be vocabulary in particular that they won't know. You can get them to look at a few key words. I think if it becomes laborious that the students have to spend, 2 hours reading an authentic text, then it's not very useful. If they can get the gist, the main core information from a text in 10, 15 minutes, then it's worthwhile. It also has the advantage, again, that, I could imagine asking my students, go and find something in the news on an English speaking website that interests you and come back and tell the class about it. They don't need to understand everything, right? They just need to understand the core information. So I think it's a great idea personally.
Oh, okay, perfect. And so just the last question about this one, that there's a teacher who has two students who want to learn English, but they don't want to take classes as the classes by themselves, as a structured class, because they haven't learned what they want. How can you tell them that they want to learn, but they don't want to take classes?
They want to learn, but they don't want to take class. Well, I mean, I would like to learn Russian without taking a class, but I think I would probably need a class to learn Russian. So I kind of think that, I think with languages, there is sometimes a feeling that we can, just learn it an easy way. And I don't think there is an easy way to learn a language. And I think that if you're lucky enough, for example, if I wanted to learn, let's say, Portuguese, if I went to Portugal, I would learn it maybe easily with trial and error, but there would be a lot of error. So I think that systematic teaching, which is the kind of things that we do in our classes every day with our students, with our books, I think in the end, that is a shortcut to learning. So I think that, classes are like an essential part of learning a language, really.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Dave. Well, I apologize because we have some other questions that unfortunately we cannot follow, right? But they have, here you have you can, any questions and doubt, you can contact Dave, right?
That's right. And I wanted to say that if anybody does, I try to read the chat box, but there are things that escape me. If you feel that I haven't answered any of your questions or any of your comments, then please do join the Teach with Dave Facebook. We have now 9,400 people around the world, secondary school teachers. We share information, and I always reply to everything personally. So if you'd like to join me there, then I would be very happy. And thanks so much. Before I leave, thanks so much to everybody. There's just so many amazing comments in the chat box. Real pleasure. My third festival, I think, and it's always a real honor and a privilege and a pleasure. Thank you.
Dave, the pleasure is for us. So thank you very much for this amazing session. And well, take good care of your throat. And
I'm sorry about my throat. See you soon.
Thank you, Dave. Now, can I share my screen? So as we can see that Dave shows some the importance of using authentic materials. Of the students that we have nowadays are more demanding. So they need more information, something like authentic videos from authentic resources, so they can differentiate between the fake news and the information that is real, right? So this is what we can get with Gateway to the World. That Gateway to the World has amazing features that are very helpful for us as teachers and for us to teach students, right? Some of the two features that we can highlight are the virtual classroom exchange that Dave had just mentioned, that the students can get in touch with students all over the world through their teachers, through an online session, right? We have the section also that is called Great Learners, Great Thinkers, where we're helping students to develop emotional intelligence and critical thinking skills. You know that emotional intelligence was important before the pandemic area. After the pandemic area is more than relevant, is more than important that we know how to deal with this, right? So if you want to go deeper to this information, right here you can discover more at facebook.com/gateway to the world.